才收到 news， 干嘛？你是要打游击啊？
你要是有什么事情，你可以请假，你上不看就走，你什么意思啊
？Shut the fuck up！ 我是牛马吗？下班时间还要给你请假？我不要回家打你吧？
你加个半小时班再回去吃饭不行吗
？Shut the fuck up！
Folks, it is official. Deadpool and Wolverine was pure white boy excellence. It was pure white boy excellence. No more, no less. I was very much vindicated when I was talked about this movie a couple of months ago, and I'm vindicated now. My vindication tour will continue as always. And all these other punk YouTubers out there, all these early access shills, don't know what the fuck they're talking about. But yours truly does. So go ahead, hit the like button, and go ahead and subscribe. Now that that's out of the way, and I can go back to being a normal person instead of promoting this bullshit to the algorithm. Yeah, Deadpool Wolverine was excellent. I knew it was going to be from the very get-go. I knew this was going to be the only Marvel movie worth watching in some time. And it's the only Marvel movie that's going to be out in cinemas this year. Because honestly, who the fuck gives a fuck about Agatha Harkness? Yeah, I didn't think so. You're looking forward to that shit? I'm not, and I don't think anyone is. But with all that being said, I did watch this movie a couple weeks ago as we're recording this video, and I got to see it for the first time in IMAX at an early fan screening. And you can thank Nicole Kidman for that shit. Yes, that's right. I know I joke about her a lot, but hey, what can you say? What can you say? Nicole Kidman is the GOAT, especially if you watch multiple, if you've seen that AMC ad multiple times. And fortunately I have, and I even saw this movie twice, and I saw a DLC version of that same ad where she says something like, "Oh, that's magic.
That's magic. AMC theaters. We make movies better."
Or she doesn't do the but she does say, "That's magic." Or there's one where she starts off the whole thing where it's like, "When I was a girl." Yeah, I'm sure you guys have seen that one. But yeah, no, here's the thing. Nicole Kidman is the GOAT. She's the reason I saw this in IMAX, and she's the reason why I even have an AMC A-lister subscription, alright? I get to see movies for free because of her. So go in the comments, say thank you Nicole Kidman, and shut the fuck up. I'm just kidding. Don't actually do that, and please don't shill for Nicole Kidman, because that ad is cringe as fuck. And same with the DLC expansion packs of that ad. But yeah, no, but funny enough, when I saw this movie in IMAX for the first time, when that ad came up, it was the classical one that everyone has probably seen or heard of or seen memed about. But no, when that ad came up, dude, I shit you not, everybody in my theater room just started clapping and just chuckling a little bit. And I was just thinking to myself, you know what? There's at least one person in the cinema, at least in my room, that probably watched a couple of my videos. There's no way they didn't. And probably some other videos that pertain to Nicole Kidman herself, or like the meme, the AMC meme. But enough of that bullshit. I think it's time to go into the review itself, because I know you motherfuckers have been waiting on this. You've also been waiting on me to make another video, and rightfully so, alright? I do this for you guys, okay? Now, let's get into my belated review. Now, I do want to start off with the cons with this movie, because there's honestly not that much cons that I have with this movie, or that much beef I have with the movie itself. But I think the one thing I want to point out for sure, compared to the other Deadpool movies, is that I think this one has the weakest plot in comparison to the other two films. But granted, that's not the worst thing in the world, because that's like a majority of MCU flicks, and even, Marvel movies from the Fox era. But the reason I say that this has the weakest one, because I think this one didn't quite have as, an effective focus as the other two Deadpool movies, where Wade Wilson had a clear arc from, beginning to end. He actually had to overcome something. And in this movie, he kind of does, but I think the motivation for it was a bit lackluster, especially with him, wanting to be a part of the Avengers as showcased at the beginning of the movie. And I thought that in itself wasn't that super effective. Like, he wanted to be a part of some team and like mean something to the world. But to me, I was just like, I'm not really feeling that. And you thought they were going to also do this whole thing where he's like, he's trying to impress Vanessa or whatever, try to win her back. after something, but the way they explain it, or like why they broke up, was a bit, I don't know. I mean, I would also say that was a bit lackluster in itself. I don't think they thought too much into that side plot for the movie, because initially when I, saw the trailers for this movie, or, trying to figure out what the motivation was going to be throughout the entire movie, or like what was Wade Wilson going to have to overcome, I thought it was going to be about him trying to overcome a loss, or like, him not being able to have a child, because that's what I thought was gonna, they were gonna continue that plot point from the second movie, because Vanessa dies at the beginning of Deadpool 2 when it was also revealed that she was pregnant, and that was devastating to him in the second movie, and he had to overcome that, find a way to redeem himself by helping a kid in need. But in this movie, they don't talk about that at all, because, like, even at the end of Deadpool 2, or like in the end credits, he goes back and saves Vanessa, and for whatever reason, this movie, they never mention, like, what happened to the baby. Did Vanessa have a miscarriage? They don't ever talk about that. I think they reference, like, him wanting it to have a kid at one point, but they don't straight up admit, or straight up say, oh yeah, Vanessa had a miscarriage, and that took a toll on their relationship. Nope, they don't talk about that, and I was really disappointed in that aspect, because I think that would have really helped his character in this movie to help further that sort of motivation. But other than that, regardless of him not having the strongest motivation in this particular movie, I think Wolverine, he was the standout in terms of that kind of side plot, or that, character arc, because in this movie, according to the TVA, this Wolverine that Hugh Jackman portrays is considered the worst Wolverine in the multiverse. And I thought that aspect was pretty cool, because it's like, okay, why is he considered the worst one? He looks badass as hell. I mean, this dude's like, he's got that animalistic portrayal of Wolverine going on, but it's like, okay, why is he the worst one again? But then you come to find out, oh, he's the reason that the X-Men died, or not necessarily the reason that the X-Men died, but he wasn't there to fight alongside them when the humans went after the X-Men, even though they don't ever explain who these humans were, if, they were part of the Sentinel program, or worked with Bolivar Trask, from the X-Men comics. They don't ever tell you that, but other than that, I thought Wolverine in this movie was excellent. I knew he was going to be excellent. And I thought he had the most interesting character development in the entire movie. I mean, Wade Wilson did too, but I just think Wolverine's was a lot more effective in that regard. But overall, I wish this movie had a stronger plot in comparison to the other two movies. But that didn't necessarily deteriorate the whole movie experience for me. It's something, I mean, and granted, I think this could be a case of too many cooks in the kitchen, because if you looked at the credits for this movie, there were a lot of writers for this one movie, and as many writers as there was, it kind of felt inconsistent. The writing overall felt very inconsistent in some parts, and that in itself was a little disappointing. But hey, get this fun fact, I made a tweet not too long ago about me enjoying this movie overall, and believe it or not, Rhett Reese, who is one of the writers for this movie and one of the producers for, I think, almost every Deadpool movie, actually liked my tweet. Who would have thought that would have happened? Now, granted, if he knew who I was, because I do go by, like, as an anonymous account on Twitter, but if he knew about this channel, he'd probably take that like back. But I'm just kidding. I don't know that for sure. But I thought that would be a little factoid to throw in there. But to add on to the writing, or something I didn't really care too much for in terms of the writing itself or the dialogue, I didn't care too much of the vulgarity in this movie. And I know that's rich coming from me, because I usually say, hey, you motherfuckers better like this video. But I think with something like this particular movie, I understand that, Deadpool as a character is a bit vulgar, even in the comics. But even, in my opinion, some things in the comics don't always translate very well into live action, and I think they can honestly overdo certain elements from the comics, such as the vulgarity. And in this movie, I thought it was just a bit juvenile. It felt, in a way, very pointless, because, like, to me, if you're gonna, drop a bunch of F-bombs here and there, at least have a point with it, or have, like, some sort of emphasis on a point that you're making. Don't just be, like, a complete ass about it. And the reason I say that, and, like, maybe I can relate to you, some film students in my chat, however many that is, but I think, when I was in film school, there were a lot of people, who made short films for, certain exercises or, just certain classes. And whenever they would make a little short project, or like they'd have their buddies come over and help act in their short films, a lot of them, for whatever reason, they would always write in their scripts like a lot of vulgarity, and you'd have like one character who's like, "Man, what the fuck was that?" Or if it was like a horror project that they did, it was always like, "Yo, what the fuck was that? Yo, you hear that? Did you hear that fucking noise?" And like they would overdo it with the F-bombs and probably some other, vulgar words that they probably shouldn't have been using to, make a point. But I say all that to say that for this particular movie, I think that the juvenile humor was a bit much. I didn't care too much for it, and it just felt very try-hard, very millennial-esque type of writing that I obviously don't care too much for, and I'm very critical of, and will always be critical of as long as I live, because millennials are the fucking worst. Yeah, I know how to use F-bombs, okay? I know. I'm the only one that can really use them effectively compared to anyone else. Let's just be real. But no, I in all seriousness, I don't care too much for millennial-esque writing. You guys know that based on my other videos I've made. But yeah, other than that, I didn't care too much for the juvenile humor. It was a bit much. Could have done without it. But yeah, that's pretty much all the cons I have for this particular movie. And now, onto the pros. Now, I do have quite a bit of pros for this movie because I really enjoyed it, and I think what I enjoyed the most about this movie was the dynamic between Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. I think they play off of each other very well, and that was one of the many things I was really looking forward to in this movie, and I think they landed it. They landed their roles very well. And honestly, I was very much looking forward to the idea of this team up. I always wanted to see a Deadpool and Wolverine team up, and thankfully we got it. And honestly, I think both Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman's performances in this movie kind of outshine the many cons I have with the movie itself, because I think they, both have a lot of charisma. They, have great comedic timing for each other, or like when they have that kind of sort of banter with each other as characters, or even actors, much less. But I think, yeah, it pretty much makes up for a lot of things that I don't like about the movie. And it can honestly pretty much distract you from other things that are going on in the story and the inconsistent plot at times. And it really just goes to show you that if you have really good actors in your movie, you can pretty much be distracted by anything else that is lacking in some areas. And this movie is essentially the highlight of that. And speaking of highlights, I actually enjoyed the cameos in this movie. Or actually, to be more accurate, I would say that they were supporting roles in the movie. And that is, of course, the heroes over here, the cameos, and that being, Channing Tatum's Gambit, Jennifer Gardner's Elektra, Wesley Snipes' Blade, and then Daphne Keene's X-23. I thought, they were a major standout in the movie, and surprisingly, I was genuinely surprised they had the role that they did in this movie, because I thought they were only going to be shown for like a few seconds, but thankfully that wasn't the case, and they actually had a part to play in the film's story, or at least kind of towards the third act of the movie. And also, I'm not going to forget Chris Evans returning as Johnny Storm. Thought that was pretty cool. And another thing I want to bring up with these cameos or supporting roles, to be more accurate, is the fact that the way this played out, in my opinion, what Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was supposed to be, this movie made up for. I think this Deadpool and Wolverine was the true Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, or what it could have been, because they actually utilized, I think in this movie they kind of utilized the multiverse very well. It actually had something meaningful to the story. And it was, in my opinion, I thought it was a lot more effective than what they did in Multiverse of Madness, because I thought that movie was forgettable in that regard. We all initially thought that they were going to have like a bunch of, massive cameos, and then it just turned out to be one massive cameo, which was John Krasinski's Mr. Fantastic. But then that was very much short-lived. But in this movie, the cameos or supporting roles, I'm just going to say supporting roles. The supporting roles in this movie, I thought, were extremely effective and very much memorable. You could tell that even when I was, when I watched the movie for the first and even second time, people really enjoyed. I think they enjoyed Channing Tatum's Gambit a lot more than the other supporting roles, or the other multiverse figures. I mean, granted, people did really like seeing Wesley Snipes back as Blade, because I mean, who wouldn't enjoy seeing that? But yeah, when you see someone like Channing Tatum as Gambit, you really like. You wonder deep down, like, what would his solo movie, have been like? What did we miss out on, when that was going to be a thing over at Fox Marvel? And I have to say that I think we regretfully missed out on that. I think, that was a major missed opportunity right there. And the fact that they brought Channing Tatum back, or like at least let him play this character for the first time in this movie, I think was a great decision. And now people are very much intrigued on seeing a Gambit solo film, or at least seeing him again in the role. And speaking of seeing again in a role, I was actually pleasantly surprised at Jennifer Gardner's return as Elektra, because if you look at someone like, Jennifer Gardner as an actress, surprisingly, and I don't mean to say this to sound like an ass, she still looks good for her age, and she looks really fit. And the reason I bring that up is because this is the nicest way I'm going to put this. Women age like milk. I don't know if y'all know that, but and also considering the fact that when women at a very young age, especially in their late teens, early 20s, don't utilize their fertility or take advantage of their fertility at a young age, that can do a lot of detrimental stuff to them. Especially when they don't, get married and have kids, they start, aging terribly. And I'm not saying that's the case for every single woman on this planet, but it just goes to show you that when you don't, take advantage of things when you're young, you're going to get fucked over. And I know I'm going off on a little tangent here, but hey, this is the reality. And if you can't accept that reality, I'm going to go ahead and tell you what your parents never told you when you were growing up. And that's the fact that you need to grow up, and you need to accept the reality of these things, okay? This isn't a Disney movie, ironically speaking, or even unironically speaking. This isn't a Disney movie. We are not the same. Things happen in life, and you just have to accept that. But going back to the review itself, Jennifer Gardner has aged gracefully, and it's probably the fact that she's been married, she's had kids, and she still works out. She's very much fit. You can tell by her Instagram page or even her TikTok page. She takes care of her body, and she's very serious about it. She doesn't seem like the type of person that, smokes, drinks, and does drugs. She's very clean cut, and it's something that you can admire. And I hope we see more female heroes like this, if we're going to see more female heroes or superheroes in these comic book movies, because if you look at a lot of other female superheroes, you look at them and you're like, okay, I'm not scared of that twink. I'm not intimidated by that twink. Okay? You don't look fit. It looks, even if you have like superpowers, like let's say Brie Larson's Captain Marvel, you look at her, it's like, okay, I'm pretty sure I could kick your ass any day of the week. Not saying that I want to do that, but you get the point. And then you look at someone like Jennifer Gardner's Elektra. She still looks great. She looks like she could kick someone's ass. And I wish more movies would take note of this. And hopefully this is a return to form in that regard, if we're going to see more of these type of heroes in movies or upcoming movies. Like I want heroes that look like they would kick your ass and that they stand out. They're larger than life itself. But yeah, I know, even though I said I was going to get off on this tangent, I really haven't. But here's the thing, I enjoyed seeing her back, and I think what I enjoyed the most, not only just her, but seeing Wesley Snipes back as Blade, is that it made you really miss on what we once had, because we've had so much schlock come out in the recent years, and you're just thinking to yourself, will these movies ever get good again? Will we ever see a decent comic book movie that isn't, completely retarded and just, I don't know, just has something to say for itself and it's just memorable? And I think that's kind of my problem with a lot of modern day movies, is that a lot of the times they're not memorable. They don't have that sort of lasting effect that older movies do. And hopefully this movie will kind of help return to that form. I would say that overall this movie is a return to form. It's a return to the OG, remembering something that you once had, something that was good, and the fact that we can still have these things. And I don't mean that in necessarily like cringe nostalgic factor, because I know some people will overplay their hand with the nostalgia, especially Hollywood studios. But in my opinion, I think that there is such thing as effective nostalgia, and you can always use nostalgia to have like a point of reference of what we need to do to go forward. Sometimes you have to move backwards in order to go forwards. And I'm not saying like always keep it in reverse, because a lot of Hollywood studios, unfortunately, have not learned this lesson. They want to keep living in the past. They don't want to move forward. But what I'm simply saying is, I think a movie like this was definitely necessary to show the audience that, yes, we can have good superhero movies. Or maybe not even just the best, but just something memorable, just something to talk about for, years to come. And, going back to Elektra, the character itself, I know the movie wasn't the greatest thing ever, like the Solo movie, or even Daredevil, much less, but the thing is that it at least sort of had its own identity. You do remember it to an extent on like how bad some things were about it, but at least that's kind of what made it, was the memorability that it was a terrible movie. But at least people talked about it back then, and like to an extent some people are going to talk about it today. Like, I think just like bad cape shit in general, like older cape shit from the Fox Marvel era, is still talked about. I mean, hell, look at a lot of the X-Men movies, or at least like, from The Last Stand to Origins Wolverine, and then probably some others down the road. I mean, those movies were memorable in their own right, maybe not in the best way possible, but they were still memorable. And now you just get films that they're not necessarily good or bad, they're just mediocre at best, and you never talk about them ever again. That's how bad it's gotten. And I want more movies going forward where we're not heavily reliant on nostalgia, but we're at least like, bold enough to, make a point with our movies, is what I'm getting at. But one last thing that I want to add before, closing off this video, and in my opinion, this was a pro, and it's going to kind of sound convoluted to what I was saying earlier about nostalgia. And it's the fact that there is some a really effective nostalgia bait in this movie. And what I'm about to say is going to piss some people off, but it needs to be said. And what needs to be said is that early to mid 2000s nostalgia is way greater than 80s nostalgia. Yes, I said it, and yes, I stand by it. I mean, just look at the intro to Deadpool and Wolverine alone. Which song did they choose to play at the beginning of the movie? Yeah, which song? Oh, that's right, a song that came out in 2000. NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye. And what song has been memed to death ever since the release of this movie? Oh, that's right, Bye Bye Bye. And honestly, I thought that was way more memorable than Madonna's Like a Prayer towards the ending of the movie. And I know a lot of people are trying to meme that song to death, but I'm sorry, NSYNC just hits differently. It hits a lot better, and it just resonates more with me. Sorry Not Sorry. And especially considering that they played Avril Lavigne's I'm With You, that one hit a lot more differently than, say, a song from the 80s. And I'm not saying that I don't like the 80s, or that there weren't some things to like about the 80s, especially, movies and music, but since I didn't grow up in that era, I don't really care as much. I don't resonate with that shit as much. I resonate more with early to mid 2000s movies, TV shows, and music a lot more. And, I'm actually very proud that I grew up during that era of time, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And I'm not going to act like some cuck about it, like some people do my age, especially in their early to mid 20s. Where they think the 80s is the greatest, decade of all time. It's like, motherfucker, you're my age. You didn't grow up in that era. Stop acting like you did, okay? Eye of the Tiger is not that great of a song. Stop playing that shit. And just stop playing all sorts of music from that era and act like you grew up in it, because I know you didn't. And quit letting shows like Stranger Things brainwashing you into thinking that era was so great. Just be appreciative of the era you grew up in, alright? Stop being a cuck about it, and just appreciate it. There's a lot to appreciate from, art back then. I mean, there is. Just go look it up. Go listen to a playlist from that era. you might have a different perspective on things. Alright? Stop listening to your parents. Your parents think they're fucking cool when they say the 80s was the greatest decade, Reaganism, all this other bullshit. Shut the fuck up! Alright? That's what you need to say, alright? Just tell your parents, hey, you know what, guys? I'm proud of where I grew up. I like the things that I had growing up. And honestly, the cartoons I watched were much cooler than yours. You didn't have SpongeBob growing up, so go fuck yourself. I'm just kidding. Don't disrespect your parents like that, because that's really unbiblical at its finest. Okay, please don't do that. Show a little bit of respect. But no, but to some degree, I am serious. Just be proud of where you came from. All right, there's nothing to be ashamed of. All right, be proud of the culture that you had and can still have to this day. There's a lot to appreciate. But I think that's gonna do it for this video. I think I've said enough, and I've probably pissed off enough people. Because I know some of you guys, especially those that aren't subscribed to this channel, I know y'all like to have your little passionate discussions in the comments section, and I appreciate that to an extent. But hey, at the end of the day, this stuff is not that serious. Don't lose sleep over all the things I've said and critiqued about this particular movie, or any other pop culture reference I've critiqued. Okay, it's not that serious. Life is great. Go touch some grass. At least not too much, because you'll probably sneeze and you'll get sick. And trust me, touching grass is not all that great, because I don't know, every time I go and touch grass and go outside, I just get more black-pilled. But I think there's something to be said for that. I think there is too much of a good thing at times, and that's one of them. Touching grass is one of them. But no, in all seriousness, you guys, I appreciate y'all checking out this video. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this. I know I haven't uploaded in a while, but hey, I'm glad to be back. And guess what? I just got a new laptop. How cool is that? So hopefully you can expect more content from yours truly. I hope you guys check out all my other bullshit in the link below or above, wherever the fuck I'm going to put it. I'll put it somewhere, but please go check out my other content, and I hope you guys have a great day. Peace out.